They say with prep time, Batman can take out just about anybody. It's an argument that you've heard if you've been on the internet before. So, what happens if Batman sets his target to the Justice League and has a lot of free time on his hands? In 1998, Mark Waid wrote the Justice League Tower of Babel storyline, with Howard Porter taking care of the art. Let's not hesitate and jump right into it. Ra's al Ghul is a bastard, and he wants to ruin the world because that's kind of what he's wanting to do here. And he's like, I've got a great plan to take out the Justice League, but first I've got to distract Batman. And his plan to keep Batman distracted is to dig up the bodies of his parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne. And Bruce is like, oh no, my parents are gone, I gotta find the bodies. Meanwhile, the Martian Manhunter is just flying around minding his own business when he's just smoked with a missile out of nowhere, and then he notices there's a dust around him that isn't dissipating. We cut away from that to the Flash and Wonder Woman, who are called to Germany to take care of a fire that's burning in the forest. And they see, oh my god, there's a dude who's on fire causing all these fires. And they take him out. They run a vortex around and take away all the oxygen to stop the fire from burning. And then they see that it is Martian Manhunter himself that was on fire. And it turns out the missile that hit him had all these little nanites that clung to his skin and then would basically light him on fire. As long as he is exposed to open air, he is on fire. Not a good place to be, considering the Martian Manhunter, basically one weakness is fire. If that's your weakness, you don't want to be on fire. He also is scared of it. Rightfully so. And then we head over to UN, and there's a whole thing there that really isn't important, and Aquaman and Plastic Man show up. And right away, another missile comes and hits Plastic Man, and he is just snap frozen solid. And another missile is coming, and Aquaman's like, oh crap, if he gets hit with that missile, he's gonna break. So Aquaman actually dives in front of the missile. But then he is hit with a different missile, and it explodes, and this gas comes out. And he is hit with something that makes him afraid of water. Now, Aquaman, being the king of Atlantis, and Atlantean, half Atlantean, needs that water to keep him alive. He's drying out without it. So him being afraid of water is a huge deal. So he's on the floor cowering, Plastic Man's frozen solid, and one of Raz's guys comes with a hammer and just smashes Plastic Man, shattering him to pieces. So the rest of the League has their 3 downed allies up on the tower, and they're looking into it. They're like, oh, what's going on? And they're seeing the nanites, and they're seeing the fear toxin, and they're seeing what's happening. The Flash actually had to put all of Plastic Man's pieces back together like a gross jigsaw puzzle while he was frozen before he thawed out. He said it was quite gross. So they call Batman, they're like, Batman, the Justice League is being targeted for attack. We need help. Meanwhile, Batman's kicking people's asses on an airplane because he's looking for his parents' bodies. And he kind of dismisses them. He's like, is anyone dead? Superman's like, well, no one's dead yet. And he's like, then you can handle it without me. And hangs up on them. So they're like, okay, I guess we're doing this without Batman. The Justice League knows they're being targeted, and that's when Ra's al Ghul instigates his big plan, and he hits this button on this thing, and it just distorts language across the planet. Newspaper headlines are mixed up, and eventually people will not be able to understand each other talking. Communications break down. Words get all jumbled, so people can't read signs and everything like that. Everybody's worried, obviously, and the Justice League can't get a hold of Kyle Rayner. He's the Green Lantern on the League at the time. Because oh, we haven't heard from him, maybe he's been attacked. So Wonder Woman and the Flash again go to check it out, and Kyle has been blinded. And he's like, I'm a Green Lantern. He's also an artist, but he's a Green Lantern, and he's like, without being able to see, I can't use my ring effectively. So he's taken out. That's 4 of the 8 Justice Leaguers just taken out of the equation. But before they get too far, more of the League of Shadows have kind of kicked in the door, and they shoot a little tiny microscopic bug at Wonder Woman, and it goes into her ear and attaches itself to her brain. And then she suddenly thinks she is in the fight of her life, and she cannot lose, because one of her weaknesses, I guess, is being very competitive. So she is actually in this mental fight. She's gonna just fight this fight until her heart gives out, basically. And then, of course, the Flash is shot with a vibrating bullet. Now, normally, the Flash with his super speed, bullets don't really affect him. You'd think he would just see them and run out of the way, but he doesn't do that. So what he does is, he vibrates his body at such a frequency that the bullets actually pass right through him. So, and that's kind of what he does instinctively. So he sees a bullet coming, he instinctively starts to vibrate to pass the bullet through him, but the bullet is designed to vibrate at that same frequency, and it actually shoots him and hits him in his spine. And the Flash starts experiencing epileptic seizures at the speed of light. Probably not pleasant. Actually, I know it's not. So Aquaman's still up on the watchtower, and he's really weakened, but he's kind of starting to piece together some of what's happening, and he calls to Atlantis down to his friend Vulko to have something sent up. He actually gets an Atlantean water suit sent to the watchtower. And at the same time as all this is happening, Batman has actually found his way to Ra's al Ghul's base, and he's getting ready to beat the crap out of Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's al Ghul's like, actually, look, I have your parents. And he is threatening to bring them back because he's holding them over a Lazarus pit, which is what Ra's al Ghul uses to heal from mortal wounds and to stay immortal. So he's saying, I wonder what happens if I dip a dead body in there. Maybe we bring your parents back to life. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to have your mother's touch? Batman's like, no, you use them as bait. You're sick. What do you really want? And he starts beating up Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's al Ghul's like, check this out. And he pulls out this piece of red kryptonite that I think it would be cool if I had, but I don't. Back at Green Lantern's apartment, before the League of Shadows can take anybody out, Martian Manhunter actually shows up in the Atlantean water suit. Like, he's contained in water, so he can't be on fire if that's the case. But they kind of put a hole in that suit, and he starts to leak out, which is going to be bad. But then Superman shows up, and he's like, okay, I'm going to save the day because I'm Superman. And they're like, no, remember that red kryptonite? Here it is. And Superman's like, don't like this. So the red kryptonite is something that Batman actually synthesized himself. He's accelerated the radioactive half-life, which changed its color. It's less lethal, but it's excruciatingly painful to Kryptonian physiology. As they say as they're holding it over him, it won't kill you, but it will certainly make you wish you were dead. Now, of course, Batman, ever the detective, has figured all this out, and he understands that the plans are being used to take out the Justice League, and he gets out. His signal's being jammed in Roz's base, so he's out and he's running down the mountain trying to get a hold of the Justice League, and he's like, man, get out of there before it's too late. That's why Roz wanted me distracted. I couldn't risk warning you. The plans, the traps, the signal trackers. Superman, they were all mine. I did this to you. And we're reading this, we're like, what? Batman's plan, pardon? Looking back now, we kind of have hindsight of what happened, but actually the next issue kind of explains everything. Talia al Ghul actually snuck her way onto the Justice League Watchtower and basically stole Batman's files. Okay, what does that do? That gives her some information on everybody in the Justice League? No, Batman had meticulous plans on how to take out every single member of the Justice League. And simply a matter of what Batman was doing in his free time. Even when he's up there just hanging out with his friends, he's having a friendly sparring competition with Wonder Woman. He's analyzing her moves, he's analyzing her weaknesses, seeing how competitive she is. Aquaman comes in to talk to him one day. He's like, hey, what's up, Bruce? You want to talk about whales or whatever? And Bruce is like, no, I'm busy over here. And he's doing some experiments on various of Scarecrow's fear toxins. Apparently he was, developing the one to make Aquaman afraid of water, to take him out. He understands Martian Manhunter's afraid of fire, so he develops a way to envelope him in fire. My personal favorite one is Green Lantern. He is just sitting there having lunch, and Green Lantern basically says, hey, Batman, I would sure not like to be blind. That would suck if I was blind. And Batman's just like, I understand. So while some of me analyzes Kyle Rayner, he's just like, yep, blind that guy. And actually what he does is pretty neat, because his idea to make him blind isn't some technological thing. It isn't poking out his eyes. It's a subliminal implantation, basically, giving him the idea to think he's blind while he's asleep. And since he was wearing the ring made him blind. He gets over it later because they're just like, hey, that's just it. It's a mental implantation. Just stop thinking you're blind and you won't be blind anymore. And he does. From there, it's pretty straightforward. Everyone gets better. Aquaman finally passes out from lack of water, but Plastic Man has finally come to. He catches Aquaman and then ends up putting him in a water tank while he's unconscious. Martian Manhunter is using his X-ray vision while talking to Plastic Man, while Plastic Man's going really, really, really thin with his fingers to pull the implant out of Wonder Woman's brain. Kyle's just fumbling around blindly. Superman's kind of just out of control of his powers, and Martian Manhunter's like, Superman, you've just got to pull it together for a minute. You have to do some surgery on the Flash, because my heat vision, I can't use it because I'm in this water suit. Superman does, and he laser visions and gets rid of the bullet in the Flash's spine, and the Flash is able to walk again. He's like, oh my god, you guys have no idea the pain I was in. There were entire days where I was just praying and hoping to die. And they're like, Wally, you have been out for 22 minutes. And he's like, oh my god. A lot of them are kind of left scarred and traumatized by the pain that has been inflicted on them by Batman's plans. And of course, while all this is happening, the world is still falling into ruin because, people can't read signs, people can't communicate with each other, and, jump to the worst thing. So wars are breaking out, fights are breaking out, the world is going to ruin.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Then the Justice League's okay, we're kind of up, we gathered ourselves, we gotta go help Batman stop this whole thing. And then Superman's like, what if it's another trap? And everybody's kind of like, whoa. They stop dead in their tracks. They're like, shit. What if it is? So Superman goes and confronts Batman as he's on his way to Antarctica, and Batman's like, look, there's not time to get into this now. Just go. Take the Justice League to Antarctica. We have to stop this. And they do, and they go there, and everybody's like, Batman, what the hell? And he's like, no. Not now. That's pretty much that. They go, they beat the crap out of Ra's al Ghul, and they're like, well, we're going to deal with this after. And the rest of the story from there is pretty uneventful. They save Batman's dead parents' bodies, they save the world, they stop Ra's al Ghul, everything kind of gets back to normal, but then the Justice League's like, well, we've got to deal with the bat in the room here. There's something obvious, let's talk about it. And Batman brings up the case, like, we live in a world where there are psychics that can take over our mind. People can swap bodies with us. Remember Agamemnon? I'm not saying you guys are going to go bad, but people could take over your bodies. Like, I need to have a non-lethal way to stop you if you go rogue or are taken over. I personally think Batman's right. He makes a good point. So they end up taking a vote. Martian Manhunter says, you know what? I think Batman should stay. Green Lantern, he's like, I don't want to vote. I'm new. And they're like, no, you have to vote. And he's like, okay, honestly, I'm pissed off. I'm furious, but I think he should stay. I think he might have been right. Aquaman says, no, we should be able to trust each other. So He needs to go. The Flash sits and thinks about it. He's like, oh, once again, I'm kind of mad, but what if he's right? He's Batman. We shouldn't really question him at this point. He's probably right. There should be strategies against us if something goes wrong. And he says, let him stay. A case comes up against Hal Jordan, who at this time had kind of turned into Parallax. Wonder Woman, with regret, votes for expulsion and asks Plastic Man. Batman had brought Plastic Man into the Justice League, and he's like, I know, I owe Batman a lot. I owe him everything. And then he thinks about being physically smashed to pieces, which was obviously traumatizing. And he's like, get him out of here. That's 3 in favor of expulsion and 3 in favor of letting him stay. And the deciding vote comes down to Superman. The Justice League walks out to confront Batman with the news to find he's already gone because he knows them so well. He knows how they were going to vote. He knows they were going to vote him out. So he left. But realistically, he pays for a lot of it, so maybe they should have been the ones to leave. This story kind of had ripples all throughout the rest of the comics. The Teen Titans kind of stopped trusting Nightwing a little bit. They're like, hey, are you on with that? Some of the other younger heroes, I believe, was it Young Justice at the time, stopped trusting Robin, and everybody stopped calling Oracle. Like, anybody associated with Batman, they were kind of like, you're keeping plans against us. And it's, I don't know, I think it's blown out of proportion. Like, absolutely what he did was kind of wrong, and maybe he should have just let them know about it. He didn't need to do it in secret because his plans did fall into the wrong hands. But I absolutely think that having plans to stop superheroes that get out of control is absolutely the right thing to do. Have a non-lethal way to stop them. There was an animated movie a few years back called Justice League Doom that took a lot of the elements of this story. It was different. It was Vandal Savage, not Ra's al Ghul, and he had a whole team of villains. But a lot of the things were similar. Martian Manhunter drank a drink that put magnesium onto his pores and lit him onto fire, burst him into flames. The Flash was stopped with something on his wrist and he had to speed, basically, the movie Speed. If he slowed down, it would have exploded. Wonder Woman had like some scratch on her that made her think she was fighting Cheetah. Everyone was Cheetah. It's a similar premise, but the story was actually quite different. It's definitely worth checking out. I think you should. It's got one of the better lines in it because at the end, they're like, hey,
You're still so arrogant, you didn't bother to come up with a plan to stop yourself.
I do have a plan. It's called the Justice League.
it's absolutely worth checking out. I think actually it's more enjoyable to watch that than it is to read the comic, because the whole dyslexia thing happening around the world is just kind of weird. Like, I think there's great elements to this, and like I said, had lasting effects on the DC universe. I think the whole Batman betraying the Justice League, which he didn't technically do, but like Batman's plans, the Batman protocols being used against the Justice League, I think needed to be in a better story than what it was. That said, I have been Haussmann Comics. I think the lesson we can all learn here is to not get on Batman's bad side. Subscribe to Haussmann Comics now. What he does is he vibrates his body such a frequency. He vibrates his body.